The birthday revelation, the morning sunlight, streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Malibu mansion, painting golden streaks across the marble floors. Celeste Winters stood on her bedroom balcony, watching the Pacific waves crash against the private beach below. Today felt different. Today she turned 18. 6 years had passed since that terrible night when everything changed. The car accident had stolen her parents in an instant, leaving 12-year-old Celeste alone in a world that suddenly felt impossibly cold. That's when Damien Cross appeared, 29, devastatingly handsome, and already a tech billionaire with storm gray eyes that seemed to see right through her. When the social workers explained he would be her legal guardian, grief had numbed her too much to question why this stranger would take responsibility for a broken little girl he barely knew. The years that followed had been a careful dance. Damien provided everything: the finest tutors, expensive art supplies, clothes that made her feel like royalty. But he himself remained just out of reach, a shadow moving through their shared home with mysterious purpose. His frequent business trips sometimes lasted weeks, leaving her with Mrs. Helena, the kind housekeeper who had become more mother than employee. But when Damien was home, everything changed. The air itself seemed charged with electricity. Celeste had noticed her own transformation over the past year, how her pulse raced when she heard his car in the driveway, how she found excuses to linger in rooms he might enter, how her dreams had begun featuring storm gray eyes and promises of things she didn't yet understand. She told herself it was normal. Girls developed crushes on handsome older men all the time. But this felt different, deeper, like something that had been growing in the darkness of her heart, waiting for exactly this moment. Miss Celeste.
Hey, Mrs.
Helena's voice called from downstairs. Mr. Cross is asking for you in the library. Celeste's heart began racing. The library was Damien's private sanctuary, lined with first-edition books and dominated by his massive oak desk, where he conducted his most important business. She had been inside only a handful of times, never alone with him. She found him standing by the window, still dressed in the charcoal suit from his morning meetings. His broad shoulders were tense beneath the expensive fabric, and when he turned to face her, something in his eyes made her breath catch. Celeste, he said, and her name on his lips sounded like both prayer and curse. Happy birthday. He moved to his desk and retrieved a small velvet box, holding it out with hands that weren't quite steady. Inside lay a necklace, unlike anything she had ever seen, a pendant of rare blue diamonds that seemed to capture and hold starlight. It was your mother's, he said quietly. She asked me to give it to you when you came of age. Celeste's fingers trembled as she lifted the necklace. You knew my mother? Something flickered across his face, too quick to interpret. We were business associates. She was a remarkable woman. He moved behind her to fasten the clasp, and Celeste felt the warmth of his breath against her neck, the gentle brush of his fingers against her skin. The pendant settled just above her neckline, its weight somehow significant. There, he murmured, his voice rougher than usual. Beautiful. She turned to face him, and suddenly they were standing closer than they should. Be close enough, too. See the flecks of silver in his gray eyes, close enough to breathe in his cologne mixed with something uniquely him? Damien, she whispered, not sure what she was asking for, only knowing she needed something from him, something that had been building between them for months. His control cracked slightly. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with a tenderness that made her heart stutter. You don't know what you're doing to me, he said, voice barely above a whisper. You don't know how hard it's been, watching you grow into this beautiful, incredible woman, knowing. I can't what? She asked, stepping closer, emboldened by the raw honesty in his voice. Can't touch you the way I want to? Can't hold you the way I dream about? Can't love you the way you deserve? The confession hung between them like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Celeste felt something unfurl in her chest, like a flower blooming in sunlight. He wanted her, this beautiful, untouchable guardian who had shaped her world for 6 years, actually wanted her. But I'm 18 now, she said, her voice steady, despite the chaos in her heart. I'm not a child anymore. The forbidden kiss. Damien's eyes darkened. And Celeste saw the war being fought behind them: desire, battling duty, need wrestling with propriety. Age is just a number, Celeste. There are other considerations. I'm your guardian. I'm supposed to protect you. Not what? Not love me. The words seemed to hit him like a physical blow. His hand dropped from her face, and he stepped back, running his fingers through his dark hair in a gesture she recognized as his tell when struggling with difficult decisions. "This is wrong," he said, but his eyes told a different story. "It feel wrong?" she asked, closing the distance he had created. "Because it doesn't feel wrong to me. It feels like the most right thing in the world." She reached up and placed her hand against his chest, feeling the rapid beating of his heart beneath her palm. His breath hitched, and she saw the exact moment. His resolve began to crumble. "Celeste," he warned, but there was no real conviction in his voice. "I've been waiting for you to see me," she said, her voice gaining strength with each word. "Really see me. Not as the broken little girl you rescued, not as your ward or responsibility, but as a woman who knows exactly what she wants." "Do you want?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "You," she said simply. "I want you." The confession shattered the last of his resistance. With a sound that was half growl, half surrender, he pulled her against him, his mouth finding hers in a kiss that was nothing like the gentle, tentative first kiss she had imagined. This was fire and demand and 6 years of suppressed longing, unleashed all at once. His hands tangled in her hair, tilting her head back so he could deepen the kiss. And Celeste felt her knees go weak with the intensity of it. She had been kissed before, clumsy attempts by boys her own age that had left her wondering what all the fuss was about. This was different. This was a man who knew exactly what he was doing, who kissed her like she was air and he was drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Damien rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if trying to memorize the moment. "This changes everything," he said. "I know," she whispered. "There's no going back from this. I don't want to go back." He opened his eyes then, and what she saw there made her pulse race all over again: heat and possession, and something deeper. Something that made her feel like she was standing on the edge of a cliff about to jump. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Because once I have Uriah, have you, I am not going to be able to let you go." The promise in his words sent a shiver of anticipation down her spine. "I'm sure." That night, in the privacy of his bedroom, with its view of the endless ocean, Celeste learned what it meant to be wanted by a man like Damien Cross. He was gentle but demanding, patient but passionate, taking his time to worship every inch of her body as if she were something precious and fragile. She had expected awkwardness, pain, the fumbling uncertainty she had heard about from friends. Instead, she found magic. The way he touched her, kissed her, whispered her name like it was sacred, made her feel like a goddess being worshipped by her devoted priest. When she finally fell asleep in his arms, her head on his chest and his fingers stroking through her hair, she felt complete in a way she never had before. Like all the broken pieces of herself had finally found their way back together. But when she woke the next morning, the bed was empty and cold. Damien was gone, and in his place was a note, written in his precise handwriting that made her blood turn to ice. "Celeste, what happened between us was a mistake. I've gone away to think, to figure out how to handle this situation appropriately. Please don't try to find me. Mrs. Helena will take care of you until I return. I'm sorry, Diaz." He read the note 3 times before the words truly sank in. A mistake. 6 years of growing love, of careful courtship, the connection she had thought was mutual reduced to a mistake. The necklace he had given her felt heavy around her throat, like a collar marking her as his possession. But apparently, she was a possession he no longer wanted. The revenge plan. 3 weeks passed with no word from Damien. 3 weeks of Mrs. Helena's worried glances, empty rooms that still carried his scent, of sleepless nights replaying every moment of their time together, searching for signs she had missed. Celeste had cried for the first week. The second week, she felt numb. But by the 3rd week, numbness had crystallized into something harder, sharper: anger. She was done being a victim. Done being the grateful little orphan who accepted whatever, Scraps of affection were thrown her way. If Damien Cross thought he could use her and discard her like a toy he'd grown tired of, he was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. The plan began to form on a rainy Thursday morning as she sat in the library, surrounded by law books she'd borrowed from Damien's collection. She had always been brilliant. Her tutors had ensured that. But now she turned that intelligence toward a singular purpose. She started with research. Damien's business empire, his investments, his weaknesses. She combed through financial newspapers, tech journals, anything that might give her insight into the man who had shaped her world and then abandoned it. What she found was interesting. Crosstech Industries was in the middle of a crucial merger with a European software company. The deal was worth billions and required absolute discretion. The slightest scandal could derail everything. A slow smile spread across Celeste's face. Scandal. She could work with that. Next, she reached out to old contacts, the wealthy families she'd met at various charity events over the years. The children of billionaires who thought of her as Damien Cross's ward, but who were about to discover she was so much more. Marcus Ashford was her first call. The 22-year-old heir to a media empire had been trying to ask her out for months. Despite Damien's obvious disapproval, now suddenly Celeste was very interested in that dinner invitation. Celeste? Marcus's surprise was evident when he answered her call. Is everything all right? You sound different? Everything's perfect, she said, her voice honey-sweet. I was wondering if that dinner offer was still open. Of course. Tonight, I know this amazing place in Beverly Hills, actually. I was thinking somewhere more ... public. Somewhere photographers might be. There was a pause. Are you sure? I mean, won't Cross have something to say about? Damien isn't here, Celeste said, allowing just a hint of hurt to color her voice. He's traveling. Indefinitely. Marcus didn't need to hear more. Within hours, Celeste found herself at the most exclusive restaurant in West Hollywood, wearing a dress that cost more than most people's cars and smiling for the cameras that just happened to be there. The photos were online within hours. Billionaire's ward steps out solo read one headline. Cross Industries heiress makes splash at exclusive hotspot read another. She made sure to give a carefully crafted interview to a gossip blogger, painting herself as a young woman finally finding her independence after years of being sheltered by her overprotective guardian. I'm 18 now, she said, looking directly into the camera with her mother's blue eyes. It's time I started making my own choices, but that was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Celeste launched what she privately called Operation Liberation. She enrolled herself at USC without consulting anyone. Using the trust fund her parents had left her, the one Damien had managed, but never fully controlled. She hired her own publicist, started an Instagram account that gained followers by the thousands, and began accepting invitations to every high-profile event in Los Angeles. Always with a different young man on her arm, always looking radiant and carefree, always making sure the photographers got their shots. The media ate it up. Cross Industries' Princess Finds Her Wings became a regular story. Began speculating about discord in the Cross household. Society pages wondered aloud if the famous guardian-ward relationship was fracturing. Each article, each photo, each carefully orchestrated public appearance was a message sent directly to Damien, wherever he was hiding. You don't get to control me anymore. But Celeste's masterstroke came when she accepted an invitation to appear on a popular talk show. She sat across from the host in a pristine white dress, her mother's necklace catching the studio lights, and delivered a performance worthy of an Oscar. I think people have the wrong idea about my relationship with Damien, she said, her voice carefully modulated to sound mature beyond her years. Yes, he's been my guardian, but I'm an adult now. I have my own dreams, my own goals. I can't live in his shadow forever. When the host asked about rumors of tension, Celeste just smiled sadly. Sometimes the people we care about most are the ones who have the hardest time letting us grow up. The interview went viral. #Celeste winners began trending on social media. More importantly, Crosstech's stock price began to fluctuate as investors wondered if personal drama might affect the upcoming merger. Celeste watched the markets from her laptop, feeling a fierce satisfaction with each point the stock dropped. If Damien thought he could break her heart without consequences, he was learning otherwise. She was in the middle of planning her next move when Mrs. Helena knocked on her bedroom door, looking more worried than Celeste had ever seen her. "Miss Celeste," the older woman said carefully, "I think there's something you need to know." The shocking discovery, Celeste looked up from her laptop where she'd been monitoring the continued drop in Crosstech stock price. Mrs. Helena's face was pale. Her usual composure cracked with obvious anxiety. "What is it?" Celeste asked, though something in the older woman's expression made her stomach clench with sudden dread. Mrs. Helena closed the door behind her and sat heavily in the chair beside Celeste's bed. "I've been debating whether to tell you this for weeks ever since Mr. Cross left. But with everything that's been happening, the media attention, the interviews, I think you have a right to know the truth." "What truth?" The housekeeper's hands twisted in her lap. "About your parents' accident, about why Mr. Cross really became your guardian." Celeste felt the world tilt slightly. "What do you mean?" Social worker said he volunteered that he had some business connection to my family. "There was a connection," Mrs. Helena interrupted. "But not the kind you think." She took a shaky breath. "Your father. He was driving the night he and your mother died. But he wasn't alone in the car." Celeste's blood turned cold. "What are you saying?" "Mr. Cross was supposed to be in that car too. They were business partners, you see, about to close a major deal. The meeting ran late, and your father offered to drive. But at the last minute, Mr. Cross got a phone call, some emergency at his company, stayed behind while your parents left." The room seemed to spin around Celeste. "You're saying he was supposed to die with them?" "The guilt nearly destroyed him," Mrs. Helena continued, tears now flowing freely down her weathered cheeks. "He blamed himself completely. Said if he hadn't taken that call, if he'd gone with them as planned, maybe he could have prevented the accident, or at least he would have died with them instead of living with the responsibility." Celeste felt something fracture inside her chest. "So he took me in, out of guilt." "No, child. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It started as guilt, yes, but it became so much more. I've watched that man for 6 years, seen how he looked at you, how he worried about you, how he tried so hard to be worthy of raising you despite feeling like he'd failed your parents." "Then why did he leave?" Celeste whispered, though she was beginning to understand. "Because he fell in love with you," Mrs. Helena said simply, "and he thought that made him a monster. He thought he was betraying your parents' memory, betraying the trust they'd placed in him. When you turned 18 and he could no longer deny his feelings, it broke something in him." Celeste sat in stunned silence, processing this revelation. Everything she thought she knew, every assumption she'd made about Damien's motivations, suddenly looked different through this new lens. "There's more," Mrs. Helena said quietly. "The necklace he gave you, it wasn't your mother's." "What?" "I was there when he bought it. Spent weeks searching for the perfect piece, something worthy of you. He had the jeweler engrave something on the back. Have you ever looked?" With trembling fingers, Celeste lifted the pendant and turned it over. There, in Damien's precise script, were 4 words that made her heart stop. "My heart, my home." But before she could fully process this new information, a wave of nausea hit her so suddenly she barely made it to the bathroom. Mrs. Helena followed, holding her hair back as she retched into the toilet. "Miss Celeste, are you all right?" the older woman asked, but her voice sounded strange, knowing. Celeste sat back on her heels, wiping her mouth with a shaky hand. The nausea was subsiding, but a terrible suspicion was forming in her mind. When had she last... "Oh no," she whispered. Mrs. Helena helped her to her feet, studying her face with growing concern. "When was your last cycle, child?" Celeste tried to think, but the past few weeks had been such a blur of anger and plotting and public appearances. I don't know, maybe 6 weeks? 7? The 2 women looked at each other in silence, the weight of realization settling between them like a stone. "We need to be sure," Mrs. Helena said finally. An hour later, Celeste stared at the positive pregnancy test in her hands, her entire world reshaping itself once again. She was carrying Damien's child. The night that had meant everything to her, that he had dismissed as a mistake, had created a life. Part of her wanted to laugh at the cosmic irony. Part of her wanted to cry. But mostly, she felt a strange sense of clarity settling over her. This changed everything. All her careful plans for revenge, all her public campaigns to damage his reputation, none of it mattered now. She was going to be a mother. And despite everything that had happened between them, despite his abandonment and her anger, she wanted this baby. But first she needed to find Damien, because ready or not, they were going to have to face this together. She was still sitting on her bathroom floor, staring at the test, when her phone rang. The caller ID made her heart stop. Damien. With shaking fingers, she answered. "Hello, Celeste." His voice sounded different, strained, exhausted. "We need to talk?" "Yes," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "We do." The final confrontation and resolution, Damien arrived at the mansion within the hour, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, stubble shadowed his jaw, his shirt was wrinkled, and his storm gray eyes held a haunted quality that made Celeste's heart ache despite her anger. They faced each other in the same library where everything had begun 6 weeks ago. But now the space felt different, charged with unspoken truths and looming revelations. "I saw the interviews," he said, without preamble. "Photographs. The ... He ran a hand through his hair in that familiar gesture of frustration. "I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But what you're doing, it's dangerous. You're making yourself a target." "A target?" Celeste laughed, but there was no humor in it. "From who? The media? Society?" "I think I can handle a few photographers, Damien. You don't understand. There are people who would use you to get to me, who would hurt you just to hurt me." His voice cracked slightly. "I can't let that happen. You can't let that happen." Celeste's voice rose. "You don't get to disappear for 6 weeks, call what we shared a mistake, and then come back acting like you have any say in my life." "It was a mistake," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You're 18, Celeste. I'm 35. I'm supposed to protect you, not..." "Mrs. Helena told me," Celeste interrupted, "about the accident, about why you really became my guardian." Damien went very still. "What did she tell you?" "That you were supposed to be in the car with my parents. That you've been carrying guilt about their deaths for 6 years. That you took me in because you thought you owed them that much." His face went pale. "Celeste, is it true?" He closed his eyes, his shoulders sagging with the weight of carried secrets. "Yes, I was supposed to be there. If I had been, maybe I could have prevented it. Or maybe I would have died with them. Either way, you wouldn't have been left alone." "But I wasn't alone," Celeste said quietly. "You were there. Been there for 6 years, giving me everything I needed." "Out of guilt," he said bitterly. "I took you in because I felt responsible for your parents' deaths." "Can you not see how wrong that makes everything that happened between us?" "Because it didn't stay about guilt," Celeste said, stepping closer. "Did it? Mrs. Helena said you fell in love with me. Is that true?" Damien's jaw clenched. "My feelings don't matter. What matters is that I'm supposed to protect you, and instead, you what? Loved me? Made me feel cherished and wanted for the first time since my parents died." Celeste's voice broke slightly. "Do you know what that night meant to me? Do you know how it felt to finally understand that I wasn't just a burden you'd taken on out of obligation?"
Oh.
"You were never a burden," Damien said fiercely. "Never. You were.
Oh.
You were the most important thing in my world. That's why I had to leave. That's why I can't..." "You can't what?" "Love me." "It's too late for that, Damien. You already do." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw the exact moment he noticed the changes in her appearance, the slight pallor, the way she was holding herself, the subtle fullness in her face that hadn't been there before. "Celeste," he said slowly, "are you?" "Pregnant," she confirmed, her voice steady, despite the tears threatening to fall. 6 weeks, which means it happened that night. It's the night you called a mistake." Damien went completely still, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and finally something that looked like wonder. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. "God, Celeste, I've ruined everything. I've destroyed your life, your future. Stop, she said firmly. Stop deciding what's best for me, what I can handle, what I want. I'm not a child, Damien. I'm a woman who's in love with you, who's carrying your baby, and who's tired of being treated like I'm made of glass. He looked up at her, and she saw tears in his eyes. I love you, he said simply. I've loved you for longer than I should have, deeper than I had any right to, and that terrifies me. Why? Because I'm supposed to protect you, and instead, I've put you in danger. Because I'm supposed to be your guardian, and instead, I've become the thing you need guarding from. Because I'm supposed to honor your parents' memory, and instead, you've loved their daughter so completely that you'd rather break both our hearts than risk hurting me? Celeste finished. Don't you see? That's exactly what they would have wanted, someone who would put my happiness above their own. She moved to kneel beside his chair, taking his hands in hers. I forgive you for leaving. I forgive you for being scared. But I won't forgive you if you leave again. This baby, our baby, deserves better than that. I deserve better than that. Damien cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away. The tears she hadn't realized were falling. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be what you need. You just be you, she said simply. The man who bought me a necklace and had it engraved with my heart, my home. The man who's been taking care of me for 6 years without asking for anything in return. The man who loves me enough to walk away if he thinks it's what's best for me. I can't walk away, he admitted. Not again. Not from you. Not from our baby. Then don't, she whispered. Stay, fight for us. Fight for this. When he kissed her this time, it was different from that first desperate kiss in the library. This was a promise, a commitment, a surrender to the love they'd been fighting for so long. Marry me, he said against her lips. Yes, she breathed. Yes, of course, yes. 6 months later, Celeste stood in the same library where their love story had truly begun. Wearing a simple white dress that accommodated her growing belly and her mother's blue diamond necklace, Damien waited for her at the altar they'd set up by the windows, his eyes bright with unshed tears of joy. Mrs. Helena stood as her matron of honor, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. A small group of close friends and family filled the space with warmth and laughter. As they exchanged vows, Celeste felt the baby kick, as if their child was already eager to join the love story that had created them. Damien's hand found her belly, and she saw the wonder in his eyes as he felt the movement. I love you, he said, his voice carrying across the small gathering. Both of you, for now and always. And I love you, she replied. My heart, my home. When they kissed as husband and wife, Celeste felt the last piece of her heart slide into place. She was no longer the broken little girl who had needed rescuing, nor the angry young woman who had thought revenge was the answer. She was simply Celeste Cross, wife and soon-to-be mother, surrounded by love and ready for whatever came next. Their daughter was born on a crisp autumn morning, with Damien's gray eyes and Celeste's determined chin. They named her Alina, after Mrs. Helena, who cried when she heard, and immediately appointed herself the baby's honorary grandmother. As Celeste watched her husband hold their daughter for the first time, his face soft with wonder and love, she knew that some mistakes were actually the most beautiful kind of destiny. Some love stories began with tragedy, but ended with triumph. And sometimes the greatest love required the greatest courage to claim. Their story had begun with loss and evolved through love, anger, forgiveness, and finally, the deepest kind of commitment. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and it was beautiful. And